Good afternoon, passengers. Welcome to Martel Air. My name's Amanda, and I'll be your pilot for today. We're just beginning boarding for flight number 27, the second Martel Air freight flight, from Canberra to Moruya round trip. So grab your seats while I finish up the last steps of the pre-flight inspections of this DeHavilland Canada Caribou, the workhorse of the Martel Air fleet. Before engine start checklist with nice little flipbook. Parking brake handle set. Forward panel. External light switches off. Warning light switch right. DC generator switches on and guard. I had in fact left the battery switch on from just before. We don't need that on just yet. While I was getting the aircraft set up, I had that switched on. AC inverter switch off. Boost pump switches off. Your fuel tank selector knob normal. De-icing switches off. And prop feather knobs off. Overhead panel. Carb heat levers cold. Flaps up. Ignition switches off. Taxi light switch, which is that one, off. Landing light switches off. Throttle levers closed. Prop levers max increase. Mix lever idle cutoff. Gust lock handle is locked. Landing gear lever is down. Aft electrical panel. Circuit breakers are in. Cargo door switch is off. And before engine start checklist complete. Good afternoon, passengers. The weather today is a little variable. It's been windy and rainy around here, and we'll be cruising at an altitude of about 6,000 to 8,000 feet en route as we fly over the New South Wales Highlands towards the south coast. Your cabin crew today is me, assisted as always by my co-pilot, Wing Commander Lamington. And your emergency exits are located to the back of the plane, through the exceedingly large cargo hatch and the doors just to either side of it. I also have multiple emergency hatches up here by me, and if you see me leave, please follow me quickly. Our in-flight catering services are provided by our wonderful passengers, so I hope you pack something interesting. We also have a coffee machine near the entrance to the cockpit for those who'd like to support the channel and Wing Commander Lamington's dog treats habit. Engine start checklist. Right hand engine. Battery switch on. Throttle lever rack open. Right hand boost switch normal. Prime switch right. Master start switch on. Prime switch off. Mix lever to auto lean. And right hand ignition switch to both. What have I missed that it is not starting? Okay, master starts. And then start switch right. And master start off. Start switch off. Throttle lever set for 8,000 RPM. Lovely. Mix lever auto rich. Right hand booster pump off. Oil pressure gauge minimum 30, check. Right hand engine started. What just moved? That's the feather switch, we don't want that in. Okay, left hand engine. Battery switches on, throttle cracked open. Left hand boost pump normal. Prime switch left. Master start on. Prime switch off. Start switch left. And left ignition to start. Both. Start switch off. Master start off. Throttle levers matched for 800. Mix lever auto rich. Left hand boost pump off. Oil pressure check. Engine start checklist complete. We're now almost ready for departure, so please fasten your seatbelts and turn off your devices apart from those used to watch this stream. Thank you for flying Martel Air. We hope you don't die. After engine start checklist. Throttle levers set for 1000. AC inverter switch main. Panel light potentiometers. Let's get those up. Set. Pilot compass setting to slave. Pilot compass nav source set to GPS. GPS system. System is active. And loading. Okay, origin set. Destination set. Waiting for GPS signal. Hydraulic pressure is down here. Check. And brake pressures check. And yes, the Caribou is in fact the extra bonus for those who love checklist content. Engine run-up checklist. So we get our ground crew to give us a visual confirmation. And the area around the aircraft clear check. Parking brake handle is set. Mix levers to auto rich. Throttle levers set for 1200. We'll look outside the window, make sure we're not moving. Oil temperature at least 40 degrees. Check. Flaps lever to full. 40 degrees extension. And again we go to our ground crew. And we confirm full flaps extension. At which point we raise them up again. Bring the barn doors back up. And pitot heat switch, which is on. Okay, 1900 RPM checks. Gust lock unlocked. Throttle levers set for 1900 RPM. There we go, both engines coming up together. Prop levers min decrease. Prop RPM drops to approximately 1200. Check. Prop levers max increase. And 2200 RPM check set for 2200. Manifold pressure approximately QNH check. Rust gauges match left and right check. Engine throttle check set for 1900 RPM. Left engine throttle and at least 200 RPM drop. That's quite the drop. And unfeather that engine. Right hand engine feather. And confirm RPM drop. And feather off. And prop RPM check max increase. Throttles to idle. RPM approximately 600. Check. And gust lock handle to locked. Okay, engine run-up checklist complete. Before departure taxi checklist. Rear cargo door. Currently open. So, cargo door switch on. Ramp closed, cargo door closed. And ramp extension switched off. And we watch that closing. And of course the ramp was all the way down for when we were loading up our cargo and passengers, so it's a little bit more of a delay. And rear cargo door closed. Cargo ramp switches off. Cargo door switch off. Cabin lights on. No smoking light on. Seatbelt light on. Cabin heating systems are not required. De-icing switches not required. Flaps lever is up. Wing and tail lights on. Taxi lights on. Taxi clearance. Canberra ground, Martel 27 with information Yankee, request taxi for takeoff, east departure. Taxi 2 and hold short of runway 35 using taxiway Charlie Bravo November, Martel 27. Taxi clearance check. And now parking brake handle release. Okay. Departure. Taxi time. Now we get our ground crew to give us a little check. And we are Clear to taxi. Now then, just double checking. Good, I got that control mapped correctly, so we engage some reverse thrust. Why is that not moving? Okay, something is going on with one of the systems. Okay, that is definitely off. The engines are started. The gear is down and locked. Okay, well, it'll push us forward. Yeah, something up with the game does in fact seem to be the correct answer. But it pulled us forward, so that's something. Just double checking, how is the quality of the stream coming through? Just while I fiddle with this briefly. Because YouTube is giving me some interesting warnings about how the stream quality is coming through at the wrong bit rate, which is all just very silly and dramatic. But how's the stream itself? Interesting. I shall have to fiddle with that at some point later, but this is what we get when I don't double check every single thing and don't stream for, I can't even remember how long it's been. Probably several months at this point, because things keep happening. Okay. Let's see if it wants to play along now. There we go. We are actually reversing. We are now reversing a little too fast. And now we can actually drive out properly. I find it fascinating that Flight Sim has decided to populate Canberra Airport in Australia with American Eagle flights, with American registration numbers. That's not the usual things we get around here. In fact, I would be surprised if American Eagle even flew to Australia. Ooh, dramatic rumbly noise. Is that a jet, our wheels, or the weather? Ah, that's why they're parked there. They're just very lost. And the one thing remaining is brake function test. And that's a good result for our brakes. Continuing taxi. And of course we get the little pop of you need to... Ah, that's why I couldn't reverse properly before. The axis on my brake controller has been reversed. So now when I think I'm pushing the brakes all the way on, I am in fact pushing them all the way off. And it's now mapped for pull backwards to stop. That's weird. It's been a little bit since I've actually booted a Flight Sim up, so it's, I suppose, relatively reasonable that we might have lost some settings somewhere. Now, for this flight, we have approximately 2,400 kilos of cargo in the back of the plane, which unfortunately Flight Sim chooses not to model, but we are doing a fully loaded cargo flight. And as last weekend's stream, which would have otherwise been going ahead as the first one in a while, was because I was down at the lovely town of Turos Head that I have previously sung the praises of. We will be taking some cargo down to its nearest airport to do a delivery to the house of, let's say, some new furniture and all sorts of fun. So, before takeoff checklist, parking brake set, altimeter QNH set. Why is that showing something from the weights window? Here we go, that's gone away now. Elevator trim in takeoff range. Where was the trim? Is on the top panel. Aileron trim. You can tell it's a while since I've flown the Caribou. Aha, there it's on the side wheel. And push that forward a little to get us into the takeoff range. GPS system ready. Check. Lovely. Carb heat levers cold. Prop RPM max increase. Mix levers auto rich. Boost pump switches. Both normal. DC generator switches on and guard. Anti-collision lights on. Landing lights on. Taxi lights off. Engine instruments, no warning lights. Check. Fuel quantity. Check. Flaps lever as required. Let's see here. Normal takeoff. Short field takeoff. I think we'll go for 15 degrees of flaps. Gust lock handle. Unlock. Takeoff clearance. I had an exceptional time out there on my trip. I shared a great many pictures of... It was beautiful weather. We had wet and cloudy and foggy for the drive down on Friday night. Beautiful sun Saturday, Sunday. And the rain returned Monday about halfway through the drive home. So it was just the perfect window. And there was snacks, there was games, there was some tasty beverages, there was cake, which I still have a little bit of. Okay, taxi, takeoff clearance. Canberra Tower. Canberra Tower, Martel 27, ready at runway 35 for east departure. Cleared for takeoff, runway 35, Martel 27. We'll tell you more about the holiday when we're in the air. Okay. Parking brake release and begin. Taxi. Onto the runway. Flaps 15. And of course, one of the joys with the Caribou is that I have no autopilot systems whatsoever. Okay. And there's runway 35 aligned up, ready. Confirm gust lock is released. We will have a bad time if we don't do that. Wing Commander Lamington, are you happy with everything? Lovely. Okay. And returning the seat to lying position. Brakes off. Throttles to maximum. And 70 knots rotate. Holding 74 knots for climb. Gear up. Canberra Tower, Martel 27, continue for east departure. Okay. 500 feet. So throttle levers set for maximum continuous. RPM set for maximum continuous. Flaps up. Dropping slightly there. Holding approximately 105 knots for the climb, and we begin our bank to the east. because the Caribou is heavy and loud. Going to 124.5, Martel 27. Canberra approach, Martel 27, site DeHavilland Caribou, 5 miles northeast of Canberra, 4,300 feet, requests clearance, transition Charlie airspace. Squawk 6565, Martel 27. And with Commander Lamington, if you can put that into the computer. Cleared through Charlie airspace, Martel 27. And here we go on to our desired heading. Keeping the engines in a nice and comfortable sort of range. So yes, the trip to Ross this year was a bit smaller than it has been previous years, being 3 of us instead of the 6 or 7 that the house will actually hold. Basically down to the fact of some of the usual people couldn't make it between study, work, the play, and all of the alternates had, the other people I might have invited, because the thing about it is the limiting factor is how many beds, and everybody else had wonderfully sensible and reasonable reasons not to come, but we still had quite a lot of fun with just the 3 of us, and it did mean that we only had to take 1 car instead of 2 or 3 as we have some years. Okay, there is 6,000 feet. Okay. So, and it's not so much the parking as the coordination of the drive, especially the Clyde, which is the several hundred meters drop twisty road down the mountain, which we will be flying over. Okay, cruise checklist. Throttle levers are set for cruise. Prop levers set for cruise. Going for a nice average 30-20. Mix levers, let's see what gives us the best throttle. About there. Okay, and now we trim the aircraft to hold 6,000. So, one of the interesting things is that the twisty road down the Clyde Mountain, this road is known as the Clyde, it's a series of tight switchbacks with, 45 to 60 degree mountain up and down on each side, which, look, there was one year where one of the cars in our set slipped on a slick patch in the rain while blinded by somebody's headlights coming the other way and collided with the lovely catch barrier to stop them going down the mountain, which we were glad of that. Car was a write-off. People inside were lightly traumatized, as you would be. And of course, I was in the car at the front of the set, so we only found out about this when we got to the bottom of the mountain. So dropped off everybody else in my car and all of our luggage at a hotel that happened to have a 6-person setup available for us at the last minute. I drove back up the mountain to find them, and we're also just glad that it happened somewhere they could get mobile phone signal. But here we have the lovely terrain we were driving through on the way there and back, I believe that would be Bungendore. And yes, one of the interesting things about a lot of this area is that the phone signal is not the best, especially if you're not with one particular network. No notable injuries. Everybody got checked out at the hospital the next day just in case, but it was... Luckily, they weren't going that fast because it's the Clyde. But, you know, minor neck stress and that sort of thing. It was at the level of take some ibuprofen. We'd had this grand plan of we'll take a bunch of slow cookers / crock pots with us so that we can have all sorts of food just bubbling away and not actively be trying to cook. And yeah, some of those got some interesting bends on them because they were all in that car. Oh yes, extremely alarming. And yes, one of the people in my car for this trip was one of the ones who'd been in that one. So it's an interesting memory, and you know, we've checked that off the to-do list. We don't need to do that again. Oh, navigating this area from the sky is much different to navigating it from the road. I'm actually going to take us over Braidwood, which I think I've talked about before on some earlier streams, but having just been there again, I think we're going to go there again. You can see there's that single lone hill out in the distance just to the right of centre. That is one of my navigation landmarks for approximately where Braidwood is. So, Bungendore, which is the one behind us, has a lovely little train station, and one of the main times I've been there for the sake of being there instead of a place on the road was the local steam train they do, you know, a trip to Bungendore and back being fancy, so we all got dressed up lightly steampunk and went there and back. That was quite fun. And then the main delight that is Braidwood is the Braidwood Bakery, which is a very old bakery, like proper country town. I don't have the numbers to hand because I can't Google things while flying a Caribou on full manual, but it's, I'd say, probably late 19th century. It has a door inside to the bank manager's office, and like, it's still a bank in the next building adjoining. I'm almost certain it's not the same bank, but they still have the next the door to the bank manager's office. I don't know whether that's because they wanted to be able to make their deposits easily, or whether the bank manager just really liked pies. Given the pies at the Braidwood Bakery, I wouldn't blame him. Going to 118.8, Martel 27. Melbourne Centre, Martel 27 is type DeHavilland Caribou, 19 miles east of Canberra and 6,300 feet. Entering your airspace, request flight following. Score 3604, Martel 27. And if you can get that with Commander Lamington. So the main type of pies is savoury Australian meat pies, so the ones that are hand-sized good meal. I would have gotten the steak and potato one, which is a variant on a cottage pie, but they were all sold out, so I got steak, cheese and bacon, which was also quite nice. There are, there's a varying set of baked sweet pies as well, but the various options of the savoury pies are the traditional pie shop pie. Now, where did I put braidwood? Did I in fact put it beneath us? I got distracted by thinking about pies. But we are essentially echoing the path that is taken to drive this route. Put the seat up a little bit and look around. And yes, if you ever make it out to Australia, there are a number of places I would send you to experience a good Australian pie, especially the meat pies. There's the ones I keep sharing on Discord from my local pie shop that are absolutely delicious. And the Braidwood Bakery is one of the few places I would put above Dobbinson's, and good pie. We in fact, when we found out that all of the lunch options down the hill were closed because apparently the town we were going through treats Monday, Tuesday as their weekend so that they can get all of the lovely tourist money on the way past on the weekends. We had some snacks that were left over from the coast trip and braved our way back to the top of the hill so that we could have braidwood pies instead. And I've just worked out what the little pixelation thing on my shirt will be. That is ever so slight wrong settings on the color key that is taking out the green screen. So those little flickers are in fact the background. I will fix that later. And it looks like we've got some weather on the coast side of things, which is to be expected, really. Ah, there's Braidwood. I in fact turned slightly too far. I turned to go before that hill, and in fact next to the hill. Yes. There we have the lovely town of Braidwood. The highway goes straight through. And the bakery. Which means that this just here will be the highway. Yes, the clouds are pretty, but they also look like they're making deposits. So I think we will in fact get above them a little. Or not so much above them, but I think we'll get to 8,000 so that when we go into the clouds, we've got a little more space between us and those fascinating, interesting mountains. So when we were driving the Clyde last Friday night, one of these clouds that's coming straight in off the sea had just moved in. So it was after sunset, so nice and dark. And the cloud that had come in was, at a reasonable height when it was over the sea. It became fog when it hit the mountains, because it didn't lift, it just went straight into them. So the top half of the Clyde twisty road fun was anywhere down to below 50 meters visibility. And wet. So that was exciting driving. And then suddenly we got out the bottom of the cloud about halfway down the mountain, and it was perfect visibility apart from the dark. Still lightly damp, but it was just this is what we're dealing with today. I'm just going to zoom that map out a little. Didn't double check its alignment before we started. Don't pull up too much. Okay, we're about 34 nautical miles from Moruya Airport. Actually, while we were at Turos, we actually had a few planes that were quite clearly on an approach into Moruya, but they were doing the approach from the south rather than the north, so they were directly over Turos. I might have even seen a Cessna Grand Caravan in the mix, I don't know. It looked very much like a 208 without the cargo pod underneath. That was an interesting moment. Because, I mean, I've done the circling over Turos in a 208, which was, you know, it was fun, and then... But that was in flight sim, not in real life. I got kind of jealous, if I'm honest. So we'll see how the weather goes. Once we have delivered our cargo to Moruya, we may in fact do a flight over Turos on our way out, which will be a little easier when the plane is 2,400 kilos lighter. Okay, here we are coming up on 8,000. And of course, as soon as we actually get here, we see that the clouds are thinning a bit, but it's still safer up here. So you can see the interesting sort of road that I was going down, because it was down through these mountains. So that is the sort of cloud that I was dealing with on the way down. The sort of road I was dealing with. And you can see that it's, you know, an elevation of Canberra is somewhere around 600 meters. Elevation of Moruya Airport is somewhere around 2 meters. So there's quite a bit of down to do on the mountain that is almost all done in just that one stretch, because you can see it's the Australian inland flat with flat bits until it hits near the coast and has the crinkly bits, which is why some of this area is called the tablelands. Because it really is just flat, 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 flat down, wet. And of course, the navigation pointer is starting to go almost pointing us south, because we are coming in much more towards Bateman's Bay rather than towards Moruya. But luckily, the approach path, the full-length approach path is much more from the Bateman's Bay or the Turos ends, but I think we'll in fact do a general aviation approach where we overfly the airport first. And yes, mesas are a fascinating bit of tiny geography, because, you know, our tablelands are hundreds of miles wide, where it's all just plains until you realise that it drops off suddenly at the coast. And, you know, here is the very pretty suddenly. And if you remember the 2019-2020 Australian bushfires, this is some of the area that was very on fire. In fact, all of the road fittings for the Clyde. Oh yeah, there's some of the greenest bits of Australia. But yeah, some of the road signs and barriers and road itself on the Clyde melted in those fires. But it is all back to being about this green, because the Australian ecosystem... Oh yeah, view of rain from the air is wild. The Australian ecosystem is actually built around a cycle of fires. Like mostly it was the paint melting off the signs. It didn't get to aluminium melting temperature, but... Ooh. And there's the other view of rain from the sky, where we just hit some of it. So, like, being almost entirely eucalypt forest, the amount of new growth that's come through in all of this area is just fascinating. Because if you want to manually propagate eucalyptus trees, you take the gum nuts and you bake them, because they are set up to require essentially fire before the seeds will propagate, because that's when the seeds know that the underbrush competition has been removed. So it's nice and clear, and because the seeds are in or on the ground already, and then the fire sets off their germination, it means that they are the first ones there. And here we have the coast, and I will try and work out which bit of the coast we've ended up on as we slowly make our way down towards the altitude that we'll be needing. And yeah, this mix of rainstorms and blue sky is what it's been like for the past week around here. It's been wild. I mean, we're not in a monsoon environment, it's just a really weird bit of spring. Yeah, if I go across to the map briefly... Aha! So the town to our left will in fact be Nowra, I believe. I mean, the trick about monsoon season is that it's much further north. We are down in the temperate zone. De-icing as required. Throttle and prop set cruise. We are getting down a little lower, so we'll throttle back a little. Fuel boost switches are normal. Fuel tank selector normal. No smoking is on. Fasten seatbelt is on. QNH set. I mean, it might be that we get something that counts as monsoon, but I don't think we do. It's mostly further north for us. We just get weird and occasionally wet weather, but much more usually not wet. Like, I grew up in what we called the Millennium Drought, which is, a drought long enough that a lot of towns were starting to 100% run out of water. There were kids who made it to like 7 or 8 before they learned what splashing in puddles is, which was wild. Oh yeah, the Millennium Drought was formative for an entire generation of Australians. Like, forget all of this Australians never see snow business. There was a while where Australians very rarely saw water. And why is little nav map... There we go. Just looked like it was not showing up briefly, and I don't know why. Did I minimize it instead of just clicking away from it? That doesn't sound right. Okay, I think 3,000 feet is about right for us at the moment. So we're taking a slightly indirect route just to slightly more mirror the driving route because I find it more interesting. But we are 24 nautical miles from Moruya, which is almost dead ahead, but we will first be flying over Bateman's Bay. I am actually enjoying doing the very manual plane with no automation, and honestly being back in some more familiar countryside rather than the anonymous bits of far north Queensland that the caravan flights around the entire perimeter have been. Oh yeah, like, this entire place is just built for amazing views. I have grown to absolutely love the New South Wales South Coast. It still strikes me as slightly odd to call it the South Coast because it is the south coast of New South Wales, but I grew up a lot of the time in Victoria, which is south of New South Wales, so the South Coast was north. But you know, that's naming, Sawyer. Yes, north to the south coast. I think if I was trying to come up with a sarcastic name for it, I'd go look up ridiculous names for people from New South Wales, which I can't currently think of. I know the ones for people from... I know the old school ridiculous name for Victoria, and I know the ridiculous name for people from Queensland, but I can't currently remember the one for people from New South Wales. And if you're curious, the old, like, you know, old people talk, like, stuff from the 50s and 60s, Victoria is the Cabbage Patch, and people from Queensland, which is the state to the north where they grow bananas, they are banana benders. Because the main industry of Queensland was joked to be putting the bend into bananas. It makes about as much sense as you think it does. Also, I just love this plane. It's so grumpy and pretty. In fact, let's use some of the externally mounted cameras because we previously established that this plane has some GoPros mounted in various spots. Oh, that's a good one. But then we go back inside where we can actually hear things. Is the windshield bigger? Yes. Also, the windshield goes to behind you above. Because remember, this is a military plane originally. You gotta have good visibility. This is a military cargo plane, and they love their visibility. It's also essentially the biggest bush plane you'll ever see. And the little outside air thermometer is mounted above you outside. And also remember, this plane is significantly bigger than the Grand Caravan. In fact, I think the weight we're carrying in the cargo bay at the moment is approaching the weight of the Grand Caravan. And here we have Bateman's Bay, which its main role in my life is being the major town just past the bottom of the Clyde. So it is essential to stop here after flying down the Clyde, driving down the Clyde, to stretch legs and also just let your brain briefly unravel, because stressful. And you stop here before going up the Clyde, one, if you need petrol, and two, for a fortifying snack. What makes a plane a bush plane? So, bush flying is where you go to remote little airstrips that are basically the flat bit of grass, if you're lucky. Some of them might be gravel, but basically the tiny little places out in the middle of nowhere that we've cleared off enough land for you to get a small plane here. Good for remote deliveries, medical emergency stuff. So yeah, being able to do short field landing and takeoff on unimproved airstrips, aka grass, gravel, a sheep paddock with the fence getting out of the way. And mostly these are absolutely tiny planes. You can get like a package through, maybe a person. Whereas this is a cargo plane that will take several tons and land on almost nothing. Yeah, hard mode. Absolutely. So that's what the 40-degree flaps on this are for. If you're going really intense and really accurate, this thing can land about twice its own length. It can't take off in that distance, especially not with cargo. But yeah. If you're really going on the edge, this thing can land in almost nothing. Because the flaps to full mean that you're getting a lot of lift and almost no thrust, because the air from the giant propellers is being pushed down. And you're going forwards a lot more slowly. And as soon as you touch down, you get those giant propellers and you slam them into full reverse, so all of that force is now pushing backwards, or pushing forwards to make you stop. So you can stop very quickly. And when you add that to wheel brakes as Yeah, I mean, landing is all about counteracting your momentum while not gaining enough downwards momentum to do more than just touch the ground. And yeah, landing short is about removing all of your forward momentum quickly. So if you've got the giant barn doors hanging off the back and those giant propellers pushing forwards, you stop. At some point, I'll need to do a size comparison between the Caribou and the Caravan just to show how ridiculous the size difference is. Because the propellers on this are massive. The Caravan also has reverse thrust that it can use for short field landings, but it's much smaller. Like, it only has one of them, and it also has less mass to create momentum with. And there is Moruya Airport's runway. So as we are doing a general aviation flyover and pattern, we will not fly at it straight on the landing direction. That would be rude. But we are also above the pattern altitude, so that's fine. And we are doing the okay, so we've got somebody else doing landings, and they are apparently doing landing on runway 18, which is the one where you fly over Turos first. So we will trust their judgment. Moruya traffic, Martel 27 is entering the pattern downwind for landing runway 18. Okay. And yes, we have at least one other plane in the situation with us, which is fun. The joys of trying to set this all up manually, so we want that set to... I know, runway 18 is our current heading, not the opposite heading. We are not on the downwind. I will correct that. I got turned around several times there. Whoops. But I am glad we pulled off to the side so that we are not in the way of the actual airport. Attention passengers, we are now entering the traffic pattern above Moruya, and the seatbelt lights are still on as they have been for the entirety of the flight. So this means that your seatbelts should still be fastened. Enjoy this riddle and more as we come in towards landing, and thank you again for flying Martel Air. We hope you don't die. Okay, so there is our airport. Moruya traffic, Martel 27 is now entering the pattern, tunneling for runway 18. Oh, seems like we've got a bit of a spicy wind going on, actually. I've not seen the other plane that is apparently in the pattern with us. They've said 2 miles north, inbound visual runway 18. Okay. Landing lights are on. Approach checklist. Landing lights on. Mix auto bridge. Prop levers set for 2250. What's our lap setting? We are at joy of operating controls and checklist and the other interesting things. Okay, so we'll want flaps 15 when we get there. Okay, 4 miles out from the airport. Getting to about 1,000 feet. And we also want taxi lights on. Moruya traffic, Martel 27 is turning base 6 nautical miles, runway 18. Landing gear down. The strip. We need more of a base leg. Okay, prop levers to max. There's the runway. Flaps 15. We turn towards the runway. Not quite yet. Okay, confirm gear down. Windy. Moruya traffic, Martel 27 is on final, runway 18 to land. Okay, landing speed 84 knots. And we are quite high. Now, unlike almost every other plane I've flown, with the Caribou, especially when flaps get involved, you do actually start needing to point downwards. Which is part of just how much lift this thing can generate. Because those wings are large. And when the flaps are down, those big engines are pushing a lot of air that gets redirected down. Which is how you get things like the wheelbarrow maneuver, where you fly along a runway with just your nose gear touching. Because Caribou pilots tend to be insane. Okay. Easing the speed back. Be that fast, but we're also high. Nice and calm. Lights say we're high, but the picture says we're good. Here is runway 18, which I cannot see any other planes on, which is lovely. And the wind is interesting, and it's getting bouncy, and the speed's getting down to where we want it. Altitude is good. Someone entering the pattern to land behind us. And we cut. And we gently apply the brakes, lift the flaps. There we go, and we are now in the taxi portion. So, gust lock engaged, flaps up, taxi lights are on, and we just continue our rollout. And the trick is to not brake too hard or too quickly, because we still need to leave the runway. And you can see that the windsock is dancing quite a bit, which is why we were having an interesting time of things. And with somebody 12 miles behind us, we're going to be nice and brisk about clearing the runway. Moruya traffic, Martel 27 is clear of the runway. And I think we're actually going to reverse into this spot so that we can unload the cargo. At which point we just lean across Wing Commander Lamington. Thank you, buddy. Cool, and this is one where to park this properly we require ground crew assistance. Actually, let's see if we can do this with our external cameras. Because these are fixed cameras. There we go, that's a good sort of position. It doesn't want to let me do the thing while I'm inside that camera mode. It's why did I not want to reverse again? It thinks it's on one of the brakes. Is it doing? Of course, now it starts to move. And yes, padding Wing Commander Lamington is, of course, required. Okay, that's just confirmed that the brakes are off. You know what? Given the size of this plane and the size of the airport, we're going to declare that to be our position for now. Like, we'll just pull slightly further forward, and we'll stop trying to reverse on this plane. Okay, and parking brake off. Landing lights off. Now, we will not be shutting down the engine, but what we will be doing is pulling the props to feather. And now we look down here. Start opening the ramp. Start opening the cargo doors. Let's just enable full opening on the cargo doors. And you can see just how big the Caribou is compared to some of the other stuff around us. And it's coming down, coming down, coming down. And we switch. Cargo door off, ramp off. And then I come across to the weight settings, and I set our cargo values to 0. So that is 2,400 kilos, no longer up on the screen as well. But we are now significantly lighter. So, we now close those doors again. And I love watching this. And this is the part where we get out, stretch our legs in between the flight down and the flight back up. Because I figured going along with the air freight model of these flights are always round trips. To the coast and back seems like a appropriate little flight. In fact, while that's going, let's see if I can. That should be slightly better. Okay, that is closed, so we switch those off, switch off the ramp pull extension, cargo doors off. Lovely. Attention passengers, we have finished unloading our cargo here in Moruya for delivery to Turos Head, and we will soon be returning to the skies. So, we have the engine start checklist done. We have done the run-up checklists. We are in fact to the before departure taxi checklist. Okay, your rear cargo door closed. Ramp and cargo switches off. Cargo door switch off. Cabin lighting is on. No smoking. Fasten seatbelts on. Cockpit and cabin heating are not required. And the okay, so we will adjust our trim just to double check that. Now we have to set up our flight plan again. Invert flight plan. Lovely. I love that button. So it is now set up to navigate us instead of from Canberra to Moruya. It is now set up to navigate us from Moruya to Canberra. And just a quick visual check of the outside of the plane. I love the paint job I came up for this beauty. Karukariad indeed. Okay. The icing switches are set. Flaps are up. Wing and tail lights are on. Taxi lights are on. Taxi clearance. Oh. Are we going to be taking off from 1-8? Yeah, that's going to be a back taxi. Cool. Moruya traffic, Martel 27 is taxiing to runway 18 for takeoff. And parking brake release. Okay, let's do that taxi. And our fuel is still good. Now, luckily, having absolutely massive tyres and being designed for this sort of nonsense, the Caribou can in fact just taxi on grass. Let's face it, that little parking spot probably not big enough for us in this. That spot's good for the caravan. And we stop here. Parking brake on. Okay. Before departure checklist. Parking brake set. Altimeter QNH set. Elevator trim in takeoff range. Check. Peat levers cold. Prop lever max increase. Mix levers auto rich. Fuel boost pump normal. DC generator switches are both on and guard. AC inverter switch main. Anti-collision lights on. Landing lights on. Engine instruments no warning light check. Fuel quantity check. Flaps lever 15. Takeoff clearance. Now it gets a little interesting on this sort of runway. One of the takeoff clearance is looking upstream and listening on the channel so that there is nobody trying to land on top of us. And then we announce our decision. Moruya traffic, Martel 27 entering runway 18 for takeoff, west departure. Takeoff clearance check, gust lock off, parking brake release. So step 1 is the back taxi. Because with the interesting winds we're having today, we definitely want to be leaving into the wind. Which means we are back taxiing the entire length of the runway. Because this is 3.6. And there is no taxiway to the top of 1.8. And one good thing about this is if somebody's coming in on the land on runway 18, they are going to be directly in our line of sight, and there's clearance between us and the trees on either side to swerve into. The other thing we will be doing is screaming on the air traffic control channel, but yeah, somebody announcing that they are on base for landing on runway 18. But that's fine. We've already got the runway, and we announced it. Very tight turn just here. And we advance the throttles to maximum. And at 17 knots, so we rotate. And clear of the trees, gear up. And some interesting wobble from the wind. And a nice straight climb out. Okay, 500 feet above. We drop the nose a little. We set engine thrust to METO. Prop RPM to METO. Flaps up. Stabilize. Make sure that our trim is up a little. And I think we will be flying out over Touros just for the heck of it and the fun. Because Touros deserves a Caribou overflight now and then. And taxi lights off. Off. There we go. Cruise climb checklist. Ooh. That was a bump to the rudder controls. Okay, and landing lights off. Come on. Off. And off. There we go. And I think 2,500 feet is good for now. And there is Touros. You can kind of see why some of the overflights that I saw last weekend were directly overhead and kind of pointed the other way. So one of the interesting discussions while we were at lunch on Lake Touros, which is the small body of water on the other side to the town, the one on this side is Lake Coila, is that depending on the status of the sandbanks, these are either small estuaries or small coastal lagoons. The difference there being, if they're closed off, they're lagoons. If they are flowing into the sea, they are estuaries. Coila is often closed and Touros is normally open. And we're going to set for cruise as we fly over Touros. If you were seeing the various pictures that I shared on the Hands of the Emperor Discord of my trip down to Touros, then you might recognize some of the places here. So the little beach in the town part rather than the bigger one just to the bottom of screen is where most of the pictures were taken of the beach type things. And Lake Touros on the other side here is where the boat shed fish and chip shop is, which is the home of absolutely delicious fish and chips and other fried goods. And you eat your food actually on a pier over the water. So everybody who brought keys put them into the bag of the one person whose bag zipped closed, just in case. So yes, you can see a little bit of water just over Coiler Beach there. That varies between a fully blocked sandbank and a full outlet. And yes, it's essential when we go to Touros that we go for at least one lunch at the boat shed. And there's the main part of Touros, which the house that we were at is in. Anybody who is a photo detective can probably work it out down to the exact house from the pictures I posted. And just to the center of the window, you can see the outlet from Lake Touros, which is where the enormous rip that I shared a picture of comes through. And just to the left of that is One Tree Point, which is our main beach adventure. And just below, I think directly below us at the moment, to be quite honest, is where the boat shed is. So yes, just a little taste of the big rip that I shared a picture of was in fact the outflow from Lake Touros, because it cycles in and out, and when it's flowing out, it's flowing out. Oh, and you can even see the tiny little beach in the middle there that we did our main adventures on. Okay, flying over this a week after being there is kind of wild. I've just noticed how long I've been going for. I didn't realize I stretched it that long, but then I suppose the extra startup checklists for this thing will do that. And we turn for Canberra. Melbourne Centre, Martel 27, type DeHavilland Caribou, 9 miles south of Moruya, 2,400 feet, request flight following. Squawk 1344, Martel 27. If you could type that in, Wing Commander Lamington. Okay, and I think it's time to climb, so engines to Mito, props to Mito, and nose up until we want to hold about 105. And the thing about the checklists taking time is that it's also just good checklist content. Oh, and look at how this thing leaps into the sky so quickly when it's 2.5 tons lighter. Shocking. We're maintaining our climb speed and about 2,000 feet per minute instead of struggling to make one. Yeah, physics working? That's... I don't know. Seems like it must be fake or something. And there's 4,000... trim. interesting how much easier it is to handle without quite so much work. Like, I can actually stretch my hand out momentarily. And actually have even a tiny sip of my drink, which, given how much talking I'm doing, is probably handy. It'll be interesting to see how much briefer the flight back is, just on the fact that we're taking a more direct route instead of my wandering over the land route and turning slightly too far north, even taking that into account. And, you know, not doing the general aviation approach because we're going into a large controlled airport. And there's 6,000... We also have a new addition to the kit, which is one of the more complicated separate instrument panels that is formerly my dad's and on loan to me because, oh that's right, this plane loves to roll like that, because it is now surplus to his requirements since he's upgraded to a fancier yoke and throttle setup that includes all of those switches. I do not currently have it set up because honestly I forgot to get it all set up and configured in time for this flight, and also approximately half the panel is for things like autopilot control that Caribou doesn't have. So, not getting that one switched on just yet. But it'll mean that for a lot of the switch flipping in the Caravan, I'll be flipping actual switches, so long as I can work out how they map, since it's a slightly different set of switches than the actual Caravan has. And we're approaching our 8,000 foot cruise. Okay. And now we start to trim and do the cruise checklist. So, throttle set to 30, prop 20, which immediately drops the noise level. And checking for traffic channel. Okay, and now we see what the trim is like. Okay, it's drifting slightly down and slightly left. There we go. Trimmed. With just that slight leftward. I love it when you get this plane all trimmed out and flying nicely, and you can actually just take a moment and breathe. Because it's got the contrast. Because you've been doing all that work by hand, and then just suddenly you tweak one more control and it's one handle. And you'd think, after all of this time, complaining that it's a right-hand joystick and that's also where I put my drink, you'd think I'd start remembering to actually put the drink on the left so that I'm not grabbing the joystick with my left and then the drink with my right past it. Apparently, I am quite mad. Yes, I think instead of continuing the cycle around Australia, we might leave the caravan parked up at the very tip of Australia for a little bit and do some more flights around the Canberra region where I can say, you know, more interesting things about places I've ever actually seen. And since we've just got the Caribou and the Fokker in our setup so far, I think we'll do some play in those two manual planes. So, you know, we're doing a Caribou cargo run today. We might do another couple of those because it's fun and I love the Caribou. But, you know, we might also take the Fokker triplane out for a spin again. And instead of doing ridiculous aerobatic things, we'll just try to fly it sensibly. And flying that thing around where there's the actual weather can get interesting. Just lucky that I've got mine modified to have a basic radio setup, unlike the real one. My theory is that it's a headset mounted thing hooked up to the generators and I mean, it would be quite revolutionary because it's got the rotary engine on it that spins the entire engine plus the propellers. I mean, the rest of the plane will probably do fewer revolutions, yes. But given how I'm feeling about this compared to some of the previous streams, I think putting the coast circuit on hold for a little bit might help me get my excitement for this back again. Yes, exactly. It's the one where the entire engine block, like the crankshaft that the engine block mounts to, normally you mount the propeller to the engine block. On the rotary engines, you mount the plane to the crankshaft. And you mount, so yeah, instead of mounting propeller to crankshaft and engine block to plane, you mount plane to crankshaft and engine block to propeller. Really good for spinning it to get air cooling. Huge gyroscopic mass. And a total loss oiling system. Because getting fluids into the spinny thing like that yeah, there's a reason they stopped doing that sort of engine. Look, everything about World War I planes is buck wild. They barely had the technology to make them fly, and started trying to kill each other from them. A small standard hatchback has a more powerful engine than the heaviest World War I bomber. And probably a lighter engine too. Because not only were planes new, so were engines. Like internal combustion engines were super new at the time. They could barely build them. Yeah. Standard hatchbacks doing what? 70, 80 horsepower some days. I mean, I always see them in kilowatts and can never remember the conversions, but the giant engines on the World War I bombers, they were remarkably weak and heavy. Like, the reason the Wright brothers could manage powered flight is that they could build a light engine. That's their entire achievement. Building a light enough engine. There's some other stuff connected, but there's a lot of prior art on that. Ooh, bumpy winds. Here's why we don't turn off the seatbelt line in this plane. Like, I may be misremembering horsepower values slightly, but when you consider the big two-engined planes of World War One, like late World War One, one of their engines is probably comparable to a hatchback or small sedan engine, but heavier. Okay, and we've got 32 nautical miles to Canberra. And we are on track. And yes, comparing old technology to current, like old high-tech to current commercial lower-end consumer-grade tech is kind of wild. And the standard one is how much computing power was sent to the moon for Apollo. I mean, part of that was a lot of their computing was being done on the ground. But also it was their programmers were trained to do a lot with almost nothing, because almost nothing was the best that they had. Okay, fuel stuff looks good. Probably want the booster pumps off. But like, if you wanted to make something with more power than a World War I fighter plane's engine and lighter, you just get the motor out of a motorbike, because that's where we put the most development into power versus size and weight. The stuff you put in sports bikes would be, some of those would be enough to tear a World War I biplane apart from forces that are in excess of what their frame can handle. Although, you know, when you put that into the giant flywheel that is a propeller, it would be a little more interesting. And the way that a plane's propeller is its flywheel is also very handy for some of the stuff they had to do. Because one thing that a lot of World War I planes lacked was the ability to really turn the engine down. Like, throttling back was less of a thing, to the point that they couldn't really have it low enough to not just start moving whenever, or enough to properly slow down when landing. So you get this wonderful thing called a blip switch, which, when you press the blip switch, the engine briefly cuts out. Different pilots would put them in different places, but they would be like on the control column as a thumb button. And the reason that that doesn't completely screw you up from you've just shut your engine off is it's got a big flywheel on the front, it's still spinning. The way you start those planes, you get somebody to spin the propeller. It's already spinning. When it starts to slow down, you're going through the air, it'll windmill a bit and that'll start it. So good control of the blip switch was a weird thing to have to be able to do. And almost no flight sim that I've encountered models that. But then again, considering that the main ground brake for the Fokker triplane was a couple of stout lads holding the wing roots. I did some of this info dumping when I was doing the airshow episode, but the wheels on World War I planes are basically just bike wheels. They don't have the ability to steer, they don't have the ability to brake. The way that you brake is by digging the tail hook into the ground and turning the engine off. Going to a 124.5, Martel 27, goodbye. Canberra approach, Martel 27, entering your airspace, 8,000 feet. Canberra approach, Martel 27, request clearance to transition Charlie airspace. Clearance to Charlie airspace, acknowledged, Martel 27. The way that you would put a park brake on is the wheel chocks. So when you get the classic World War I fighter plane movie thing of you're getting ready to go in the plane and you shout chocks away, that's please remove the little blocks that are front and back of my aircraft's wheels that are stopping me from rolling forwards. Because that's how you turn the brakes off. You get somebody to pull them out from each side. If you need to steer the plane on the ground as designed, there's handles on the tail. A couple of people grab it, and it's fairly well balanced, like it's meant to have its center of mass around the wings, which is where the wheels are, so it's fairly light there, but they grab it, pick it up by the handles, turn it where it needs to be pointing. I mean, one of the things about pulling the chocks is that they are attached to ropes. And also, they are behind the propeller. You don't remove the chocks from in front, you remove them while standing behind the wing. And by pulling on a rope, generally. Sometimes it's shorter than others and just kind of connecting the two chocks. But, like, you know, the front and back ones for each wheel. But, yeah, it's on a rope that you can pull from a little further away. And you don't throttle all the way up before it's pulled. But, yeah. That and just people on the ground holding the wings are your two ways to actually stop the plane and turn the plane. This is part of why they didn't do complicated taxiways and runways. They just had a field. You get your plane onto the field, you get it pointed into the wind, double check that there's no obstacles between you and far enough away in that direction, and chocks away. And you know, your compass would quite often be a pocket compass, which is what it's modelled as on the flight sim model, which is actually not correct. One of the things that I was researching was the actual instrument designs to make mine as cool as I could, and it turns out the Australian War Memorial actually has a Fokker triplane compass. Because Australian troops shot a few down and took souvenirs back. Alright, 14 nautical miles out, so let's get on to Canberra Airport. Canberra Tower, Martel 27 is 14 miles southeast, 8,200 feet, with information you need to land. Enter left base, runway 3.5 Martel 2.7. Okay, so 3.5 is the one just short of north. And we want to be coming down. Okay. Attention passengers, we're now approaching Canberra for our return, and seatbelt lights are as always switched on. Thank you for flying Martel Air, we hope you don't die. Landing lights on. Mix auto rich. Drop to 2250. Easing back on the throttle. Where is that pointing me? Okay, I need to get down out of these clouds and actually spot the airport properly, because I think I misread that direction marker. Yes, I did, because that's Bungendore. So instead of flying east to capture the runway 35, we actually want to be flying west and a bit south. I mean, that bit was at least just cloud. Oh, we've got 8-knot winds. Okay. And we set this up to 3.5. Okay, so now we need to put the white arrow on the little yellow markers. If I had 3 more hands, I could set the extra GPS system to give us more information for the landing, including a full ILS, but that's not quite in the spirit of things, I think. Okay, we're 11 miles out. Don't want to be heading south. That's a bit much. We're not doing a circuit. Oh yeah, like getting... This sort of weather can be really, really pretty when you have just cloud and then patch of sun with God rays. It's a great thing, and this is not even doing this sort of landscape justice. Unfortunately, all the cool views while we were driving back up, I was driving, so no pictures. Okay, so that is about 1,500 feet above the actual ground. I love the addition of a radar altimeter. Like, there are many pictures from that holiday, including a lot of rainbow lorikeets. There was 3 sitting in the bottle brush trees just out the front that were having a grand old time. Also a lot of arguments. I even took a couple of videos of just the soundscape that we had almost constantly of... We saw at least 7 different native birds between rainbow lorikeet, crimson rosella, wattlebird, kookaburra, magpie, seagull. No seagulls except at the boat shed, which I got some chaos pictures of. But, yeah, just having all of those native birds just constantly calling throughout the day. And we had the big, like, 3-4 meter wide sliding glass doors open all day, because it was that sort of weather, which meant that we had a lot of bird noise all the time. It was a lot. Okay, that's Tuggeranong. There's the airport. Cool. I am, in fact... Wait. Yeah, no, that's the airport. Is my compass fucked up? Yeah, I think my compass is aligned incorrectly. I must have scrolled on something wrong. No, it thinks it's right. But that's 3-5. I don't think you missed too much. I was rambling about the many birds and the loudness of the birds, because we had the big sliding glass doors open that are 3-4 meters wide, just open all day, and rainbow lorikeets, crimson rosellas, kookaburras, wattlebirds, magpies. Cleared to land runway 35, Martel 27. Okay, yeah. RPM to max, flaps 15, lined up on the runway. A couple of things that I shared on the Discord were just like 20-second clips of the soundscape, and I didn't, go and pick particular loud parts. It was just always that loud. Yeah. And that's what happens when we drop our checklists on the mouse. Okay, and taxi lights on. A little bit high again. This thing loves to come in a little bit high. And we're a little bit fast. Wind is 267 was the report that we got, which is almost perfectly to the left as a crosswind. That's not 3-5, is it? Am I coming in on the wrong runway? I'm coming in on the wrong runway, I think. wait, no, 3517. Yeah, that's the wrong runway. That's why my compass seemed like it was screwed up. Flaps up, gear up. All of my digital control lights just flickered. Canberra Tower, Martel 27 going around due to navigation error. Acknowledge, enter left traffic pattern, runway 35, Martel 27. And this, friends, is called Trust Your Instruments. Clear to land, runway 35, Martel 27. So that was an interesting little mistake there. Yeah, it's pretty clouds. And I almost landed on the completely wrong runway. Because I thought my instruments must be wrong, because I seemed so out of position. Turns out, the thing that was wrong was my sense of position. This is called loss of situational awareness. And the navigation instruments are specifically designed to make that not be the thing. So now we fly that lovely back course on about 170 and wait to get about 5 miles from the runway, which our lovely little GPS tracker is keeping us apprised of, currently at 3 nautical miles. So, you know, it's not usually that we get a go around, but it's always fun to see that they can be executed safely when doing something stupid. I think that's about the right sort of spacing from the airport to get us lined up. So we pull the RPM power back, push the RPM back to max. Power back to keep the RPM out of the red line. And once we drop below 105, we can get the flaps out. And below 120, we can get the gear. Okay, there is 110, so gear down, 2 bigger circle, three green, where it decides it doesn't want to wash off any speed, thank you. Okay, flaps 15. And there's the slowing down that we were looking for. Because once the barn doors are out, it loves to slow down. Sticking the wheels out doesn't do much for you. So wind is still pretty much directly from the west at 8 knots on the last report. which is why we're flying slightly sideways. Because this runway points basically north, thus the name 35, because it's at heading within rounding error of 350. Actually 348, but there's the sort of speed we want. It means we put some more power in to make it stop dropping. Now you see this little stripe across the bottom here just short of the taxiway? That's a road that I drive down every so often, and it's a weird experience. Because it is literally that far off the end of the runway and taxiway. Luckily there's also large wind deflector panels so that jet blast doesn't hit the road. Also, it's got this lovely displaced threshold so that the wind, again, misses. That was bird. And yeah, just slightly pointing diagonal. And there we go, throttle off, flaps up. And light wheel brake application. Ooh. That. Okay, that got weird. Okay. And gust lock handle engaged. Flaps up. And next taxiway is all the way down here. Like, that was a fairly soft landing, but, you know, loud plane. And it really wants to pull to the left at the moment, and I have no idea why. Brake on. Contacting round 121.7, Martel 27. Goodbye. Canberra ground, Martel 27, request taxi to the gate. Taxiing to gate 11 via taxiway Juliet Bravo, cross runway 30, Bravo, Martel 27. Okay, landing light and switches. Oop. Off. Ah, that's what happened. Dropped the nice heavy checklist right on my mouse and screwed up several controls. Anti-collision lights off. De-icing off, and taxi clearance check. Parking brake off. Taxi. But you know, I'm just getting back into the swing of things, and I have enjoyed this stream a lot more than the previous couple where I was just kind of going through the motions of we're flying around Australia. Look, there's more Australia, because I have nothing interesting to say about those. I know why it was pulling to the left. It has a massive tail fin, and it's windy from west. And that is not the active runway, so we cross it just fine. That's why I was having to twist it round almost halfway to make it not steer off the left of the runway, because wind from the left pushes the giant sail at the back to the right, which pushes the nose left. And there's the turn for gate 11. And we get to marvel at the much improved Canberra Airport model that I acquired at one point, and if we're going to be operating out of Canberra more, we'll get to enjoy it more. Won't that be fun? Because that thing of, I got the new Canberra Airport, you know, fully customized model that actually looks like it does, and then went off to be a long, long way away from it forever. And pulling into a nice stop. You'd never park a Caribou, parking brake on. You'd never park a Caribou at the gates like this, but hey, luxury service, you get dropped off to baggage claim and expensive restaurants. Okay. Attention passengers, this now concludes our flight from Canberra to Moruya and back. And we here at Martel Air hope you've enjoyed your time in our large Skytruck. Please wait until I've shut down the engines and opened the doors, and you can calmly deplane in an orderly fashion. Our baggage handling services today will be provided by our wonderful passengers, so thank you for not leaving any of your luggage behind. Any personal belongings you leave behind as you leave the plane will be assumed to be a present to the co-pilot and enjoyed thoroughly. And if you wish to get coffee that is cheaper than the cafes inside the airport, there is a coffee machine up by the cockpit door. Thank you for flying Martel Air. We hope you don't die. Shutdown checklist. Parking brake handle set. No smoking lights off. Seatbelt lights off. Cockpit and cabin heating systems are off. De-icing switches off. Boost pump switches off. Cylinder head temperatures below 180, check and check. Mix levers to idle cutoff. And engines fully stopped. Magnetos. Ooh, doesn't like when I do that. Magnetos off. Ignition switches off. Rear cargo door, we will open that for passenger boarding and unboarding comfort, but we will not go past 15. Cargo's on. Lovely big door for getting out of the plane by. Ramp off. Cargo door off. Switches to guard. Cargo door off. Cabin lights off. AC inverter off. And battery switch off. Shutdown checklist complete. And there we have the lovely cargo ramp opened to the 15-degree position that you can even do in flight and makes it for a nice little step down. We lower it further when there is cargo to be unloaded, but as it's just self-loading cargo, I think we're going to be good. And yeah, you can see that the jetway, not particularly useful for us here. But there we go. Another cargo flight from Martel Air Freight to and from Moruya. So thank you very much for your company and for encouraging me to get back into the streaming. And I think that's approximately where we shall leave it, at the 2.5 hour mark. I am glad you had fun.